In just one weekend of football and with only 3 points, Melbourne Victory has jumped from 7th to 3rd on the A-League table, leaving the difference between all of those teams as just one solitary point. Who will make the cut for finals and who will miss out? We haven't a Scooby-Doo. But that's part of the joy of the A-League, is it not? Close contests and utterly unpredictable winners and losers. This week, Sydney regains some of their flair. Auckland break away to the top of the league. Garang Kuol could be on his way back to Australia. The Mariners throw away a piece of concrete. Victory's permanent interim just got his second win in a row. And one of the league's best players gets injured just before its biggest game on this episode of the Round Ball Australia podcast. My name is Lachlan Avil, and for the second episode in a row, Poletti, we have a full house. This is unusual for February.
It is very, very unusual, and but I mean, more people to talk A-League football is okay by me.
It is good. Christian Montegan as well. We didn't really talk about it last week too much, but you have returned from the tennis, the smaller round ball of Australian sport. Are you happy to be back?
Yeah, I missed the Melbourne Park, not going to lie. 3 weeks away from you guys was, very relaxing, but back to the drawing board now and back with you guys. So, no, I'm keen.
I wasn't aware 2 a.m. press conferences where players don't turn up could be considered relaxing.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. Are you referring to the Ben Shelton one where no one turned up? I only think it was one journalist.
I remember there was a player who didn't turn up to their press conference at like 3 a.m. in the morning, and there was, no journalists in the room.
Oh, that was Medvedev. Yeah, Lockie's right. It was Medvedev. Well, he lost a 5-setter, so yeah. Good move away from
Still got to turn up to your press
conference. Imagine an A-League coach not turning up because they lost. I can't be bothered.
What they do is they send the assistant.
Cough. Marco Rudin last season.
Yeah, they send the assistant, and then the assistant berates the journalist anyway.
Yeah. Jacob Stevens, I don't know about you. I don't think of 16-hour days at the tennis when I use the term relaxing, but each to their own.
Yeah, I mean, it's the sign of a weirdo or an idiot, and I think in Christian's case, maybe weirdo will lean that way. But no, it's great. it's great to have everybody back though. We have missed the Christian. The Christian banter's been missing for sure. It's good to have him back. Keep me in check at least. Sure. Hold me accountable. But no, it's good to have everybody back.
All right. Well, the 120-second alarm of non-football talk is going off in my head. So let's jump into Sydney FC versus Adelaide on Saturday afternoon. I think, Poletti, this was a really positive comeback. Oh, sorry, well, not comeback from Sydney FC, but obviously a bounce back in terms of how their season has been going. It breaks a streak of 3 winless games with Calais side. It felt like in that final third, that attacking kind of flow, a little bit of cheekiness, a little bit of flair started to return to the side like we saw in the first month or so of the season. They have compensated a little bit in terms of their defensive areas. They haven't all been solved, but that has obviously come at the cost of some of that attacking output, but it seems like they're starting, hopefully, to find a little bit of a happy middle ground.
Yeah, and I think, and we're going to get onto this in a moment, but I think the arrival of Alex Grant will certainly help with that. We talked about this last week. More defensive reinforcements, the better for Sydney FC at the moment, who losing, defenders left, right, and centre for one reason or another. But I mean, you couldn't have asked for a better bounce back game, as you said, Lockie. Just complete and utter domination over Adelaide United, who had a chance to keep pace with Auckland at the top of the table and just couldn't do it. And there's only one person to blame. There's probably 12 people to blame for that. The 11 players on the pitch and Carl Viet for not setting up properly to beat the Sydney FC side. And we've been saying it for weeks now. Probably 4 or 5 months. The blueprint is there to beat the Sydney FC side. You just got to be meticulous in your execution, and Adelaide clearly weren't on Saturday.
Jacob, we will get to Adelaide's lack of finishing in front of goal, which was their main culprit in the first half. But just for Sydney first, what do you think about how they move forward in their season from here? Because they've brought Douglas Costa back. He played 10 or so minutes off the bench, was a part of that final goal. Their kind of starting 11, at least in the front kind of half of the field, is starting to return, and that's when we know that they're at their best.
Yeah, I think the worrying thing for Sydney FC fans would be the fact that, yes, they got that result, and it's a rather big scoreline, but it still felt like they didn't create a lot of chances. They just took the ones that they did. And I know that seems a weird thing to be critical and picky about, but in Sydney's case, they've been pretty lackluster in front of goal most of the season. But what they've done well is create a lot of chances for the people who are going to make the difference. Your Joe Lollies, and Us Wahim as well has been another fantastic player, at least in terms of creating chances. They've won games mostly through almost sort of strong arming opposition, just with pure attacking pressure and intent. And it felt like, at least in times in this game, that wasn't quite there. I mean, they were excellent in front of goal this game, so credit to everybody who grabbed one for them. Joe Lolly got on the score sheet again, and he's, now that he's finding his feet, maybe things are gonna change for Sydney. But it just felt like that bulk chance creation wasn't quite there for them. But then on the other hand, I thought that they defended very well. Devon Ishmael's had a fantastic game, especially in that first half, kept Sydney in it when, realistically they could have conceded 3 or 4 goals. And then in the second half, I thought that the midfield unit did a really good job of breaking down Adelaide's attacking phases of play. So, Sydney, it wasn't the sort of side that we've seen from them this year in terms of the way that they were playing, but it got them the result. So, maybe this is a sign that Tale has gone, we've spoken about Tale being the sort of manager who's, I'm going to do it my way and I'm going to stick with it until I start to get the results. But maybe he's sort of realised, hang on, we've got to go about things differently when we don't have our full starting 11, when there are changes that need to be made. Obviously losing players like Hayden Matthews, that's a big out for them defensively. Injuries across the board for them as well as have been devastating. So, maybe it's a sign that Sydney, there is a little bit of flexibility there to them, and they can play different types of football, if they have to. They did very, very well on the ball. And yeah, like I said, had a sort of weirdly, uncharacteristically good game defensively as well, which is something that, is one of the big critiques of them so far this season, how open they've been defensively. They were able to stop it for the most part in this game. So, hopefully it's a sign for them to be able to kick on from that, take some positives from it, take some lessons from it, because, they weren't perfect, but they were definitely the better side on the day, and by a long, long way. And so hopefully, getting a result over somebody like Adelaide who's sitting second, that's a bit of a confidence boost. We saw the Wanderers do it obviously away to Adelaide, but they didn't quite kick on from it. It's going to be a real show of the squad's mentality for Sydney if they can continue on and find some form after this one.
Part of that defensive line, Christian, that was particularly noteworthy, Kyle Walker-Shaw coming in for his Sydney FC debut. Aaron Gerd does his collarbone midweek in training. You haven't got the new signing quite locked in and ready to go yet. He came in, he was very composed. Tale was very complimentary of him after the game. He also had the biggest group of fans in the stadium. He had like a bay and a half of people decked out in NWS Spirit kit. Obviously, he was at Sydney FC as a kid, went away to Spirit to get some first-team football, and he's come back to Sydney now. It's quite a cool story, and he did really well in this game.
Yeah, as Jacob touched on just before, Sydney, for me, defended really well in this game. I thought the line was really good, and to have, as you mentioned, a 20-year-old coming into the starting lineup with that little amount of experience within the team, I thought coming in, slotting in really well, and perhaps that gives Tale another option going forward. I don't assume he's going to be starting too many games unless he has to, but if he does keep this form up, I know it's one game, but yeah, he was very impressive. And to have, I guess, someone alongside him like Ryan Grant with so much experience under his belt really helped him as well. You could tell he was a bit more assured. You can tell the confidence was there. So that, you put those all together and it mixes for a great end product. And I thought, defended really well. Even his passing as well out from the back was really solid as well. So I thought all in all, I think Tally will be very happy and pleased, considering he is so young, and perhaps Tally was thinking before the game, okay, what's he going to produce here? We're going to get a mistake in him, but no, I thought he was very good. So no, very impressed.
So Poletti, the man that is coming in to the squad that will probably end up replacing Shaw at some point, Alex Grant, has come over from China. He was the defensive signing that Ufuk was teasing last Thursday. But they held on to it for a little while. They did kind of an old school halftime, reveal the new signing to the crowd. Plenty of people would have known what was coming. There was leaks going over social media, but for maybe some more general fans that weren't paying quite as much attention online to some of the rumours going around, it would have actually been a genuine surprise. And for Sydney FC fans, quite the welcome surprise at that.
I mean, I'd like to believe that most people are on social media these days, but when you've got a crowd of 14,000 people, and we know how small soccer Twitter is in terms of the A-League, or, in my case now, soccer BS, because I primarily use Blue Sky, those numbers are quite small, and so, yeah, you'd imagine this did come as quite a surprise. And, I mean, sometimes it's nice to just go back to the 90s or the 2000s where, you can do this sort of thing and have it be a genuine surprise, because it's not in everyone's faces every 2 seconds. But I'm just glad that I got the question answered from Perkovic, David Perkovic, NWS Spirit coach last year, who said that they were losing a player to Sydney FC but wouldn't reveal who. Well, I think we got the answer to that one.
Yes, it was written on the door quite clearly. Look, Alex Grant will be a really good signing for them. I was reading this story today. He had a lot of issues in China. He was going okay, then got injured, came back into the squad, and it was made clear to him that through social media that he'd been deregistered from the club and had to find football elsewhere. And he's someone who's talked about his ambitions as a Socceroo as well. So coming back to Sydney will be a good fit for him, I think. Jacob, in terms of Adelaide, as we said, they were wasteful in the first half, and it's what opened the door for Sydney to take control of this match. They've had a pretty good run, so you're allowed, especially in the A-League that is so even, you're allowed to misfire here or there, but disappointing for the Reds away here.
Yeah, like you said, they've been on a very good run, so it does seem harsh to go in so hard on them, but honestly, the lack of finishing wasn't even, I think, the biggest problem for the Reds in this game. Every team is going to have a game where it just feels like you can't put the ball in the back of the net. I mean, should many of those chances have gone in? Yes. I mean, one still did, but they were still creating those chances. They still looked threatening in attack. It was just that final little thing that was missing from it. And like I said, you're going to have games where that happens. That's part of football, right? But it's about how you can then, defend and keep the ball out the other end. And that's something that Adelaide have not done outside of 2 games all season, right? They've had 2 clean sheets. They've conceded just under 2 a game all season long. And their main title rivals are on under 1 a game. It's a completely unsustainable way of setting up your team to play. It's okay to set your team up to outscore an opponent. That's perfectly fine. But you've also got to be able to defend if you need to. And that's something that Adelaide have not been able to do for the last half a decade, is actually genuinely shut a team out and look confident doing it for large parts of the season. It's one of those cliche things that a defense wins you a championship, but I think it's pretty clearly the case that Auckland are starting to pull away here because, well, they just don't concede. It's so much easier to get a result if you don't concede. If you don't concede, it's 0-0. You at least get a point from it. Adelaide here, I think that, like I said, Sydney didn't create. It's not like they created a bunch of really high percentage chances. They had a couple that they took, but with even a league average defense, Adelaide is still in that game late on. It's one of those things that it really needs to be addressed. And again, for a number of years now, it hasn't been. There's been very little, if any, investment in players actually coming into the back line. The ones that have, Bart Vriens, there is no denying he's a talented player. So why is it that they keep conceding goals like this? There's more to it than just the players that are in there as well. So it seems like there's big problems across the board in the back line for Adelaide. And it's disappointing to see, because it's something that fans have spotted for years and years and years and have been crying out about. And it seems like it's still just going to be almost sort of papered over because, well, most match weeks you've got strikers and wingers who are scoring a bunch of goals, so you get the result. But then when they aren't quite on form, they're not firing, you see what the team really looks like, and it's not great watching.
And they're about to lose Kikianis for a little bit as well.
About to lose Kikianis with no replacement, because LC, as far as I'm aware, is still recovering from an injury. So, it's not going to get any easier or any better for the Reds. And, this over-reliance on attacking players, which has been prevalent since Carl Viet took over 4 or 5 years ago, it's still showing to not be a recipe for success, at least in Adelaide, because how many times now have they fallen just to that final hurdle in the semi-finals? I think is it 3 or 4 times now. There's got to be something to shake this up and go, the problem is at the other end of the pitch. It's Goodwin, Jovanovic, they're both scoring goals for fun. Zach Clough and Stefan Walker having fantastic seasons. Dylan Parias, he got on the score sheet again. He's having a great season. The issue isn't with the attacking players. It's not with the midfield. It's clearly the back four. And that's been the same thing for seasons upon seasons now. So it's just more than disappointing. It's frustrating for Reds fans because I think everybody was sort of expecting one of these results to come sooner or later. It's just disappointing to come at a time when Adelaide could have put themselves back up in the fight with Auckland, but now they've sort of dropped away again.
Sydney away is not like an easy game, but you definitely look at the run of form that the two teams had coming into it, and you'd figure that Adelaide should Christian have a pretty good chance. And as Jacob said, one of the ramifications of this is that Auckland have now broken further away atop the league. It's 5 points clear now. Adelaide do still have a game of hand, but more and more it feels over the last 2 to 3 weeks, definitely those two teams, but now even Auckland specifically feel like they're kind of breaking away from that peloton, you know what I mean, and creating that gap. Are they going to be ruining this one as, points missed out on?
I think they will. I think we've been waiting for this separation to happen for a few weeks now. Even we look back to last season and the race between the Phoenix and the Mariners, and we were thinking, okay, when's the race going to sort of drop off and when are we going to see a clear winner? I think now, more than ever, I think Auckland can see themselves as, this is our opportunity to really sort of run away with this if we can keep that sort of consistency, because Adelaide, watching this game against Sydney, you just see these same sort of defensive errors creep in. It's like, how are they going to keep this up for the whole season? For me, I know Jacob's probably saying how they've kept this up for the whole season is sort of not beyond me, but it is really surprising to see how they are second, because they deserve to be in the top 6, but second, I mean, they have been playing some good football. I'll give them credit for that, but to sustain that over the course of a season, it's very difficult to do. Whereas you look at a team like Auckland, you trust them that bit more, don't you? With that solidity, that defensive structure, you just, more often than not, put aside the West United result and a couple of those, you tend to know what you're going to get from it, right? So going forward, you definitely trust Auckland more. And I've just been trying to look at the fixture list for both Auckland and Adelaide. Auckland have Western United twice, and then they play everyone once besides Melbourne City. And then Adelaide have Brisbane twice. So, I mean, there's a couple of games where there's a few give me 3 points here and there, but I trust Auckland to get those 3 points more than do Adelaide. I see Adelaide slipping up against the Brisbane because, again, you just don't quite know what to expect, unfortunately. So, it's going to be hopefully a tighter race than I'm predicting, but I do think Auckland will run away with it in the end.
Jacob, just one thing I want to run by you is a conspiracy theory here. Do you think there's a case that only one Adelaide United team can be good at any one time, and with the women performing out of their skin this season, that the men are starting to suffer from that? Like there's just some sort of curse on the city of Adelaide where only one of the teams can do well.
That's an interesting theory, Poletti, because I think you might be onto something, because if I remember correctly, the last time the Adelaide women were good, the men's team didn't make finals, I believe. So you could be onto something there. But no, I mean, the men's team, there's still signs that there is a very good team, but there's just these clear issues that haven't been addressed for so long that, it feels like if they do actually want to be genuinely competitive and win silverware, they have to address it sooner or later, because this window is starting to open for this side now. And if they just keep leaving the defence bare and leaving it sort of neglected, it's going to come back to bite them eventually.
So Auckland's win Poletti 2-1 over the Bulls gives them a pretty commanding position as we move towards the run home. But there was one pretty controversial moment in this game. Chris Economides goes down in the box. Snedar Moreno did very well to score the opener, but then just a few minutes later, to me, I'm going to be honest, looks like he commits a foul and brings down Economides. It is light contact, and I would accept probably the argument that it might not be enough for VAR to say it's a clear and obvious error, but it's contact in the box. And I know Jake Holman scores a couple of minutes later and probably evens it out. But, if that penalty is awarded and goes in, does another goal get them further on top? So, I mean, what did you think of the incident itself? Because for me, it was a penalty.
I mean, I'm going to go back to what I said either last week or the week before, and something I've said quite often. If it's that would be a foul anywhere else on the pitch, it's a penalty. Right, I mean, I look, but even then, just this incident on its own stands tall as a penalty. I take umbrage with the fact that he had light contact. He's roundhouse kicked him in the leg.
No, he hasn't.
That would have broken a wooden plank. That,
No,
let alone,
no.
Like that would have.
That is so over the top, Poletti.
Like that was a clear-cut penalty, and I don't know what VAR was thinking. Like when they looked at that to say that's not like contact.
Because he swings his leg hard, I'll give you that, but it's not actually into Economides. It's kind of like towards the ball. He misses the ball.
It hits his ankle.
Yeah, but as his leg comes in, it's then like after the full swing of the movement where he makes contact. He's not roundhouse kicking him. It ain't that hard.
Okay, I might have gone a little bit over the top of the roundhouse kick. But like,
There we go.
Okay, but like it was a kick, right? He's kicked him in the leg, on the ankle, and Economides has gone down. It's a penalty all day, every day. And I might be getting onto this anti-VAR bandwagon that everyone seems to be jumping on, because what's the point in having VAR if it's not going to pick up a penalty?
Christian, maybe the ref should have just gone and have a look just to make sure.
Yeah.
Well, last time I checked, the referee's the one officiating the game. So why didn't he have a look? I don't know.
Because
Pen
he
or no
wasn't
pen,
told
real
he
quick.
could go over. He had to stay on the pitch like a good referee.
He did. Christian, pen, no pen?
I'm with you, Lockie. It was a pen. I'm not going as far as Poletti to saying that. Kicked him and almost killed him.
Well,
but
broken his leg.
broken his leg.
Killed. Don't put words in my mouth.
No, but just looking at that, like any bit of contact like that, which impacts the trajectory and him going over, for me it's a clear pen. Like there's no two ways about it. And for me, just the frustrating part is having to always rely on VAR to pick it up, where they've got the screens in front of them. They should be picking them up, saying, I just don't understand how. I understand you make mistakes, but how you cannot see that in the VAR room, it's just completely beyond me. It's just ridiculous. At least to not say, go to the VAR screen and have a look. Like, if that's not
That's not the process,
enough,
though. That's not the
Like,
process.
that's not contentious enough. Oh, I don't know.
They should just run around with a VR headset on that's constantly VAR, and then
It's a good idea. I'll take that.
One of those
Then they're
like
constantly
that.
looking at the screen.
the meta glasses. It's like not
Yeah,
the
yeah.
headset, but the little like hologram things in the middle. That would be a great solution for VAR. Come on, Zuckerberg, get involved. Get involved. Look, whether that incident, Jacob, actually affects the outcome of the game, we'll never know, right? But something that will impact MacArthur going forward is obviously their transfer activity. They've had a lot of outs so far in this window. George Clark for AAP is reporting that they are trying to get their hands on Garang Kuol on loan for the remainder of the season. He's had a bit of a rough time in Europe so far since he transferred from the Mariners. Maybe for him personally, a little touch of home in New South Wales could help him on his career, but also for MacArthur, and we'll talk about another signing they've just made, but they need some wingers. They need some attackers in their final third.
Yeah, they've had a lot of outs, obviously, MacArthur. So one of those clubs that's going to be really looking to push for signings in these last few. What is it? When does the window close?
I think the 12th, something like that.
12th or something. So they've got just over a week left to get some players in. Obviously, there's been a lot of speculation about Qual's future over in Europe. Does he have one? Does he have to come back to the A-League and reset himself to give himself a chance again? I don't think there's a single team in the league that wouldn't want him in their side. He's a quality player, as we know. But you've also got to consider it from his perspective of, geez, that would be it would be a real blow to the confidence and to the ego as well to have to go from thinking you've got that move and that things are laid out in front of you, and then a couple of just misfortune, really, right? Like bad loan moves. Wasn't he injured for a portion of time as well? So
yeah,
it seems like the prototypical case of a young Australian that goes overseas. You could write the story a million times and put every single player's name on it, and you go, yeah, that checks out. So it's sad to see, but then you see players like a Tilio or an Arzani who come back, and yes, I know Tilio's injured almost perpetually, but when he does make it onto the pitch, he shows the class that he has. Arzani's come back and sort of almost reinvented himself slightly at the Victory, and he looks a very good player again. So perhaps it's that chance again for Kuol to reassess where he's at in his career and go, you know what, actually this is a good move for me, because I need to get minutes back. It's going to be at least in a league that I'm familiar with. I'm back home in Australia, friends and family around me. It could be good for him, so it would definitely be good for MacArthur.
It's that recycling it's that recycling aspect that I think worries a lot of people, doesn't it? Like, okay, he's going to come back to the A-League and then, he's going to find his top form again, goes over to Europe, and then it's going to be the same old story repeating itself. Like, we've seen this so many times.
If it's a success though, it's not recycling, is it? It's
What's a
reinvigoration
success?
of
Coming back to the
Well, if he comes back, he's stellar and he gets that move again.
That's what I'm saying.
It's a success.
Okay, yeah, that's a success.
But
I'm just saying the worry is going back to Europe and then having the same thing repeat itself again. But
I mean, that's the advantage of this being a loan deal, is that it only has to be for 6 months. Get him some game time, get his fitness back. It's... I don't want to trash the... I don't want to trash like the academy system in the UK, right? But like I'd say playing for MacArthur week in, week out is a lot better than playing in the under-21s Premier League, right? So
massively so. Yeah.
So the idea of getting that 6 months of game time against adults, MacArthur are competing for a title here. I know I was a little bit more doom and gloom last week, and I probably should be doom and gloom given their performance against Auckland on the weekend, as good as it was. If that's the gulf between them and the top echelon of the league, then they're not winning a trophy this season. But getting someone in like Garang Kual, particularly if it's to replace Jed Drew, that's basically a like for like replacement. And Kual's lit up the A-League before. There's no reason he can't do it again.
My only concern with that point of view is that Garang Kual lit up the A-League for a little bit off the bench. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Jed Drew was an extremely consistent starting player this season when he was fit for the Bulls. And, as good as Kual has been, as much as Emi Martinez's armpit stopped him from creating one of Australia's best ever moments in international football, he hasn't really proven in senior men's football that he can do it for 90 minutes week in, week out. So that probably leads towards the opinion that he kind of put himself into this European environment a little bit too soon. But potentially and hopefully full games in the A-League for MacArthur. If this deal does get across the line, it's still in early stages, we understand. Hopefully it could be a good move from him. Christian, one player that is definitely coming to the Bulls is 29-year-old attacking midfielder Saif Adin Kaoui. I apologise if that's not the right pronunciation. Haven't been able to find a clear footage of his name being spoken. The deal was announced 30 minutes before we started recording.
Jacob, you're the French speaker here, so...
Goodness, yeah, don't even try. Kaoui,
Have a go.
I don't know. I think Lockie got pretty close.
Well,
Saif Adin, that's not the difficult bit is his last name.
We'll figure it out on the weekend and we'll get it right next week.
Feels like there's too many vowels in there.
There is a lot of vowels, yeah, 4 bang off at the end there. But he's played 180 games, Christian, across France's top 2 leagues. And as a former teammate of Valère Germain, which it creates a bit of intrigue as to where this name actually popped up in terms of the Bulls scouting, but attacking reinforcements, which is locked in for the rest of the season.
Yeah, definitely a positive moving forward this MacArthur side with the players that they've lost. Just fascinating with these French connections. I think Poletti mentioned in the group chat before earlier today. These French connections, where do you get them from? Obviously, Germain knows him, and we've seen a couple of them before. Diamanti, the reason why he came over because of the Alessandro Del Piero influence, and you get, once you start building these connections, it's fascinating where, how you pinch these players and okay, Australia might be a good opportunity for you, a new experience, a new adventure, and 29 years of age. Obviously, I haven't seen any of him as well, but hopefully he can thrive in this MacArthur environment, fighting for finals, as Poletti said before. Hoping he can, light it up.
According to George Clark, who broke that piece on Kual as well, MacArthur have also locked in the services of 31-year-old centre-back Kevin Bolly, who also has a French connection, so it's really going to be... Is English going to be the first language on the field at the Bulls? Who knows?
I'm going to have to start dialing Jacob in for press conferences here.
Yeah, but they are getting reinforcements.
My French is not that good anymore, so I'm going to politely decline on that.
I think just going back to this to Kaoui's signing, which I have definitely butchered that, is the fact that he hasn't played. Having a quick look here, I don't think he's played in the last 6 months. Had a 6-game stint with UAE Pro League club Khor Fakkan. And I believe that's how I'm pronouncing that right. That's definitely one for our A-League off-air friends.
1 out of 2.
Almost like Abdi Shatar from last year's Champions League. But I think a concern is probably going to be match fitness here. But I mean, it's also not the first time we've seen this in the A-League where, you know, these European players, they come off 6-month absences, they come in, you know, and light the league on fire anyway. But it's only 3 months to, you know, light the league on fire if he hasn't played a game in 6 months.
Yeah. It's tough. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Jacob, the Central Coast Mariners, they're going to be bitterly disappointed to have dropped the win in the F3 derby. It really felt like, 2-0 up through a little bit of help with the rain-affected gloves of Ryan Scott. But to be in that position and then lose, one in the box that Lockie Rose gets a hold of and Mikhail Docker goes down the other end, has a chance to ice the game, doesn't capitalise. And just a little bit of game management, really, in those final moments, not really doing enough to lock up the game. They give up a corner in bad circumstances that leads to the equaliser. Mark Jackson certainly wasn't happy after the game. He said angry. He said at that moment in time he couldn't find anything positive to take out of the game. It's just they had that in their hands and they let it go.
100%. I sort of was expecting something kind of like this from the game, right? That's why in my prediction I backed the Jets. I thought that there might be just enough in it to give them the chance to get into the game, and that was certainly the case. And it wasn't so much through the Jets playing good football as the Mariners throwing it away, like you said there, Lockie. So it's definitely going to be a case again of a side this season not being able to get the job done. And again, it's the case with the Mariners, and they look a very, very different team to what they have done the last couple of seasons. With all the success that they've had, all of a sudden this is a bit of a reality check in a way. So you can understand why Mark Jackson sort of struggling to find the words to place his thoughts on that game, because you go 2-0 up against your rivals, you've just got to see the game out. In those conditions as well, you've definitely got to give the benefit of the doubt to the defenders more often than not, that they're going to probably have an easier time of it than the attackers, and they just couldn't see it. So it was not a great display in that second half from the Mariners, and in those dying moments especially. What more can I say, really? Like, it's been a perpetual issue for them this season in terms of just making things difficult for themselves. Something the Jets have done a lot recently as well. But at least in this game, they were the ones mounting the fight back, and it was the Mariners that were suffering it. So, maybe a nice little bit of, I don't know, change of scenery for the Jets there in that case. But for the Mariners, no. I mean, it's difficult because it's clear that there are great players in that side, and I think Mark Jackson's a fantastic coach. I think that any team in the league would be very grateful to have him, but something's not right this season, and there's been sort of perhaps rumours that there are some disciplinary issues within the squad, or that there's some personality clashes or something, and obviously he's struggled finding a tactic that really works with the squad that he does have, but it's just not great for the Mariners at the moment, and for a side that I think a lot of people still have a lot of faith in heading into this season, that they've started to throw that away as well as their leads in games. So it's disappointing to see, because when the Mariners are up there and they're competing, they're getting big crowds, they're a real asset to the league. It's when they start to slip away again that the fans stop showing up. People sort of just write them off. It becomes a bit just disappointing to see, really. So hopefully they can fix things up, but I don't have a huge amount of faith in them, given that they've had half a season already and they still haven't been able to find something that works.
Christian, I want to ask you specifically about Mikhail Docker. He did have that late chance, and you can criticise him for not taking that and finishing off the game, but it feels harsh considering the context of his entire season, because he's been the one player really in this side to put the team on his shoulders at moments, especially in the difficult times, and actually drag them to results. And he's kind of one of these players that's actually stayed on. He signed a 3-year deal after they won the treble, right? So he's actually had that success with this team and decided, no, this is actually where I want to be. And the team probably isn't doing their job to help him out and allow him to have these moments, and then, for the team to back him up and actually hold on to results and moments like this. So he's just such an important player, and I think you can see it on his face at times that he's getting a little bit frustrated. Definitely earlier in the season with how things were going, but I guess the beauty of the scenario this season is, despite all these challenges, because it is so tight, they do still have time to turn it around. And Jackson spoke about this. Their goal is still to make finals, and that is something that is definitely still within reach if they can figure it all out.
If they can figure it all out, but as Jacob alluded to, I mean, they've already had over half a season to do that, and they haven't yet. So, I mean, what gives us the belief and the confidence that they can turn it around? I mean, if anyone's going to blame Docker for their issues, and you're having a laugh, because, like you say, he's been literally, if not their only bright spark, at least going forward. Like, you can tell once he's on the ball, the creativity on him, you can tell instantly that something's going to happen, right? Without him, they'd be absolutely doomed. And for them to be in this position, where are they on the table? They're from memory,
they're going to be
6th,
9th or 10th, something like that.
They're like 9th, yeah.
9th. So, I mean, they could have been way lower. Like, if it wasn't for his presence, he's been literally sort of carrying this team to do whatever he can. It's just the rest of the group ultimately just haven't been lifting their weight at the end of the day. So it is worrying because you look at this game, for instance, against the Jets being 2-0 up. I mean, last season, it's a shadow of themselves, right? You would not see this from a Mariners side at all. You know exactly what you're going to get from them, and compared to this season where just it looks like they're just lost for answers at times, and there's no real structure behind them. I think that's part of the reason why Mark Jackson has been so frustrated, right? It's like, what else can I do to fix the situation? I've blasted the team after a Nation Champions League game, to say, all right, if this isn't working, I'm going to literally put them out to dry in front of the media if nothing's going to work. Yeah. He's tried everything, and it just isn't seeming to click. So what he does now, between now and the end of the season, is, up to be determined. But, I just don't see them making finals based on what they've shown us and given us. The fight, the spirit, compared to last season, just isn't there for me.
So on the other side of this game, Poletti, the Newcastle Jets, as we said, it did feel like the Mariners lost this game more than the Jets won it, but it's always good for momentum and for team confidence when you get a result from behind like this. Lachie Rose has been struggling with injury. He's still building his way back up to full fitness. He was at a nice kind of poacher's instinct goal that was very good to see from him. And you got players coming off the bench making an impact, and Robbie Stanton made this point as well. It feels like there are reasons to be positive moving forward for the Jets.
Yeah, it absolutely is. I mean, that goal is so reminiscent of everything that Lachie Rose does on the pitch. He's just in the right place at the right time, and he doesn't always pull it off, but you to have that player who just knows where to be and when to be, it's something that's just so difficult to teach. It's almost like it's just an innate instinct at different times. But the player I wanted to highlight from the Newcastle performance was Kota Mizunuma. His pinpoint deliveries. Just it's understandable why this guy was J1, and why he's just ripping it up in the couple of weeks that he's been here in Australia off the bench. I mean, we've heard Chris McPherson writing in Sliding Doors and talking, on the Chris McPherson show about how, Newcastle are finding ways to turn 3 points into 1 and 1 point into 0. Well, this was them turning no point into a point. So, they're starting to reverse course a little bit. Whether that is just a one-off game or whether, it becomes a trend will remain to be seen. But I mean, for Mizunuma, comes to Australia, 2 weeks here, straight into a derby. And I want to know who had to explain to him that this is called the F3 Derby and why it's called the F3 Derby. It's like, okay, we're getting on the bus to go down to Gosford. Okay, what road are we taking? The M1. But this game we're playing is called the F3 Derby. Why is it called the F3 Derby if we're going on the M1? Well, you see, Australian bureaucracy. And then I just want to know who had to tell him that the sides are playing for a piece of concrete from the highway. That's all I want to know. Like, who had to have that conversation? Because that would have been a brilliant conversation to be part of.
Yeah, it's. I think Robbie Thompson said in the intro, it's the game in Australian football that is like most quintessentially Australian in terms of the derby games we have. Right, this is like the Australian kind of peak A-League game of football. It's great. We love it. And of course, that snaps a streak of 6 straight Central Coast Mariners wins in that fixture as well. So the Jets have done well to break that curse. I wanted to point out something about the crowds. Obviously, the one at the F3 was probably a little bit lower than what we would have liked for that kind of game. But over in Perth, Jacob, 11,000 at HBF Park. I understand a few free tickets were handed out, but just, to get interest, that many people interested in going to the games. Obviously, the flurry of transfer activity and a couple of results in their last 4 games has gotten people a little bit more back on side and excited to come back out to the football again, which, to be fair, that they've had, strongish crowds for the situations they're going through. And those fans shouldn't be too discouraged by what they saw, really. They had chances to break the deadlock in the first half, which they didn't take. And the victory have the quality to make them pay for that, but not terrible signs from Perth like we've seen so far this year.
Yeah, they've been hovering sort of around the 6,000 mark, even at the deepest of deep points so far for them this season. So it's clear that the fans in that part of the country love football and they love the glory. So, the fact that they're getting 11,000 now, that's fantastic. I think that I said this a couple of weeks ago, but they're sort of alongside Adelaide, one of those ones where it feels like the fan base has a real connection to the club. And so that's why they are the ones that's why they get so upset, right? When things aren't going right. And when, with all that they've been through over the last couple of years and the fact that they're still turning up, they love that club. So no, it's awesome to see. Yes, okay, buoyed a little bit by the fact that there were some free tickets handed out, but I think that maybe that's sort of a case that there's a few clubs in the league probably follow that, right? Like, what's the harm in giving out a few free tickets if it bumps up the attendance? It's not like you're going to sell those tickets anyway, right? So and what it might do is actually convert somebody into being a fan of your team, and then they will buy a ticket the next week. So it seems like a no-brainer to me, but I'm not in sports management. So
it's probably something you can't do consistently, right? Because then people will be waiting for it. But yeah,
no, but in these instances where it's a pretty big game, obviously playing against the Victory, who are flying high at the moment, they always bring decent away support anywhere they go as well. So it was always going to be a good choice for this sort of game. Not one that you're expecting to sell out, but you're expecting to get a decent crowd anyway, and this just gives it a little bit more of a boost. Yeah, I'm a big fan of it.
I have a bit of a theory.
Oh, here we go.
I think it's because Victory are the biggest club in the country, and the fans thought, okay, I've got to get out in numbers and try and support the Glory, try and get them over the line. I'm just putting it out there.
If the Victory are the biggest club in the country, why do they have such rubbish home attendances for a club of their supposed stature?
Okay, let's move on.
We could be talking about the whole league there, to be fair. Christian, Arthur Dillis, 2 on the trot for him now, who is publicly now the permanent manager of Melbourne Victory, as it was announced on Friday, as we kind of predicted after his first win in charge in the Big Blue. But for Victory as well, I said this in our Sliding Doors piece on the website. They had the potential to go from 7th to 3rd in one weekend, and they did that, which again highlights how close it is in there. But with just 1 point between all of those positions, it's going to be incredibly volatile and not something they can afford to just rest on. They got to keep pushing.
Yep, definitely, 100%. I thought this is probably a game where you thought, okay, they should win, but Victory away from home, I said in the predictions last week, historically at Perth, they always seem to struggle. Even when it was their previous win, I think it was last season when they had to score that last-minute winner, I think it was a 3-2 win, and you think, I just got away with it. And it was sort of the same here. I mean, after half-time, I actually thought Perth were very, very good, to my surprise. Obviously, I haven't watched a lot of football in these past 2 to 3 weeks, but I have noticed that Glory have improved somewhat. But the way they came out of the blocks, in that first sort of 15-minute period in that second half, I thought they were really impressive. They had that Adam Taggart chance about 20 seconds in, probably should have scored it. And a couple of other chances in between as well. I think Victory were napping a bit, and they were very fortunate not to go 1-0 down. And then from there, I guess the positive to take out of it was the way they reacted, able to wrestle back momentum and control of the game. And I thought, Izzadine Mashash was brilliant again. Just advancing the ball forward, being creative. I thought he was a real key contributor in that second half to get victory over the line. But it's sort of these wins away from home where you don't really care about how well you perform. It's just about getting the 3 points and the result, and that's exactly what victory did. And you know, signing this new appointment after Dials, it's a big confidence booster, isn't it, for the club? Because you don't want to be in a position where you're signing a new coach on for you know, a new 2-year deal, and then you know you get in this sort of slump where you're losing a few games. So you want to keep this trajectory going, this momentum heading into finals. Let's just hope, you know, they can keep it up, because in that second half towards that final 30-minute period, I thought they were very impressive, albeit not an impressive Perth Glory outfit.
Coming up next week is of course one of the marquee fixtures of every A-League season, the Sydney Derby and Poletti. We've already had two of them this year. We've had the Douglas Costa versus Juan Mata kind of showdowns. Mata started on the bench both times. Kind of felt like this third time around, Douglas Costa's just coming back from injury. Maybe we'd finally get it. But then, you know, Juan Mata goes off in the, 12th minute or something like that in their game against the Brisbane Roar. To be fair, quite impressive to be subbed off the pitch that early and still contribute the assist that decided the game. But unfortunate for Wanderers and neutral fans that, you know, obviously we don't know much more about the extent of the injury, but it seems unlikely that he'd start against Sydney FC this Saturday night.
I mean, it is unfortunate. Jacob, you're the legal expert here. Do you think the APL could file a grievance against Suncorp Stadium for the state of the pitch after it had a concert just a few days prior, which bumped a previously scheduled A-League men's game as well, I might add, which is now taking place in the middle of April?
It depends. I don't know. That's the legal way of saying I don't have an answer.
But I mean, look, Mata or no Mata, whatever the status of Mata is, I think it's a Sydney derby. It's gonna go big. You've still got Costa that you can sell on Channel 10 and commercials and everything as your marquee player in the fixture, and hopefully that does its job. I mean, it should still be one of the highest rated games of the year on free-to-air television.
If you're Sturgis though, you're probably in a position where you wouldn't mind just risking him, considering the position where they are in the table fighting for top six. Like you would take that risk, or no?
No.
Like, honestly,
No,
what do you have?
This is an Alan Stajic who spent half the season to date not wanting to play Juan Mata. You really think he's going to risk him in a must-win game?
Yeah, not at all.
Yeah.
Has he not been playing better these past few weeks?
I'm not saying he hasn't been playing better. What I'm saying is that Alan Stajic has spent half the season not wanting to play Juan Mata, and then all of a sudden it's play a potentially injured Juan Mata and have to use a substitute inside 15 minutes again, 20 minutes again. I mean, we saw what happened in Melbourne City a couple of weeks ago when Kai Schmidt went down in the 3rd minute. You know, it completely destroyed their game plan. You know, unless the game plan for Alan Stajic is Juan Mata injured 15 minutes. And then Juan Mata goes on to play 60 minutes, and all of a sudden, well, that screwed the game plan because we planned for him to come off inside 15 minutes.
Yeah, I think, look, the Wanderers are only 3 points out of finals. They've still got 10 games to play after this derby. It is not essential that they win this week. And we know that A-League is all about being your best version of your team in May, right? So for me, I think there's zero chance that Mata is risked. Honestly, Douglas Costa might not even start as well. They're still working him back. He's only played 10 minutes. Obviously, that is now putting the prophecy of another Sydney versus Western Sydney game in the final series into action. It just has to happen so we get this matchup. That would be great. Obviously, the reason, Jacob, why he started this run of being selected in the team was due to the injury of Dylan Chicluna. Good news for him this week that he has re-signed for the Western Sydney Wanderers for the next 2 A-League seasons. They have missed him as much as Mata has come in and done really well. He offers something slightly different. So he was one of the bright sparks at the first half of their season. So it's sad that we haven't been able to see him since, but good that he signed on for another 2 years. Yeah,
I think that he's a player that is one of those ones you don't notice the impact that they have when they're on the pitch. It's when they're not on the pitch that you realise, hang on, what's going on here? Why is it so easy for the other team now? He's one of those players that's always making life difficult for the opposition. big part of their win against Adelaide was because of the way that Scicluna played in the midfield. You know, it shut down the Adelaide double pivot completely all game long. You know, played through injury right at the end of the game as well. You know, he's a tremendous player, and it's rightful reward to him for having the season that he's had so far and the performances he's put in. But it's good news for the club as well to be able to keep him around, because he's the sort of player that you can really build a midfield around. And you know, I think that you're right. Matt has come in, he's done a fantastic job, but Scicluna, especially out of possession and off the ball, he just keeps that Wanderers side so sturdy and structured and disciplined, which is obviously something they've struggled with defensively. They've shipped a lot of goals. They still look a bit all sorts at the back. When Scicluna's in the team, it does feel a bit different there. So he has a massive impact on this side, you know, and the fact that we're going to be able to see him for the next couple of seasons in the Wanderers is good news for the Wanderers. It's good news for the league. Good news for those of us watching as well, because I think he's a tremendous player. Perhaps gone under the radar a bit this season with some of the other names that have been popping up in the midfield, and obviously with his injuries and stuff like that. But I think a tremendous player and a really good bit of business from the Wanderers.
The Raw have been making some moves as well, Christian. It's been mutual season up there at the moment. Alex Parson and Nisa Acosta. Acosta, I think, is interesting. Like, he looked quite lively in the very first game of the season, then got injured, and then has never really shown much of a spark since then. I think he'll kind of go down as one of those streets don't forget A-League players, like that one game.
One of those Daniel Sturridge type signings.
Yeah.
The streets will never forget.
Yeah, maybe. I don't know.
Yeah. You want me to continue?
Yeah, sorry. That was a throw to you, yeah.
Sorry, I thought you were going to continue. Sorry,
we're a well-run ship here.
No, Acosta, you're right. I thought, okay, this is going to be a promising signing for Brisbane. Like, they need a bit of flair, because you think previous seasons, like, they're just been lacking in that department. I feel as though, like I said, in the past couple of seasons, and to get a player like that who has been, quite disappointing, obviously because of injury, which is unfortunate, but that's probably a departure which, they wouldn't have hoped for. I mean, Alex Parson as well, it's like, hasn't convinced me as well this season. So, I mean, for Brisbane, I think it's definitely back to the drawing board at the end of this season for different reasons. The coaching situation, up top of the board as well, the decision-making, a lot of questions have to be answered. So it's going to be interesting to see how they all plan it out, because their project in recent times has been focusing on youth, hasn't it? We've seen Tommy Waddingham moving over to Europe recently, last month, and from there, it's been positive. It's just, how do you integrate these youngsters into the first team and build a real solid project moving forward? Because you're at a stage where the fans are like, okay, we're developing these bright prospects, but how is it benefiting us? Are we going to be witnessing a championship anytime soon? Are we going to be competing for finals? It's like, where does the buck lie for us? What do we get out of it? So I think that's where the frustration lies with fans, and it comes back to that transfer strategy as well. How smart do you play it? In terms of acquiring players, do they try and pick out these rough gems like the Mariners have done in a couple of seasons past? It's like the scouting network. It's everything, in between. So that's why, I'll be really fascinated, in the off season, how the club approaches it.
So 2 out, Poletti, but 1 in as well. They've signed another local Queensland player, someone who, has that identity of being a local that they're really trying to lean into at the moment.
So they've signed 27-year-old central defender Austin Lutwick from the Gold Coast Knights. He captained the Queensland state team that faced Brisbane Roar before beating Victoria in the Battle of the States last year. He was previously part of Roar's NPL program from 2014 to 2016, and looking at the highlights package that Brisbane Roar put out probably about 20 minutes ago, lethal from a set piece with the headers. So could be a little bit of trouble in the box for some opposition players, and who knows, maybe that's how they sneak a goal or two and start to build some wins together, is a goal scoring centre back from a set piece.
All the way back up to 4th, right?
That's how it works.
Maybe next year, Lockie.
Maybe next year. All right, well, that's going to do it for this episode of the Round Ball Australia podcast. It's funny, we've got 4 of us in here, but it's been one of our shorter shows of the last few weeks. We need Australian football to Australian football it up a little bit more. So we have more to
that's
talk
right.
about, maybe.
Well,
us
if
more
you
to
want
talk
Australian
about.
football to Australian football it up a little bit more, here's a little bit of a teaser for you. This week on the Dubcast, we're going to be discussing Sian Fryer's injury. 10 News Queensland reporting today, which is the day of recording here, Monday, that she's going to be undergoing ankle surgery, but that her sister, Lainey Fryer, is actually going to take her place in the Matilda squad. So we'll be breaking that down on the Dubcast this week. How's that for Australian football? Sister taking over sister.
Nice little family connection in the national team squad. That's very nice. I remember
And on Friday's episode, we're going to be breaking the news that Matildas have found a new coach. So stay tuned.
unconfirmed as of yet. You know what is exciting though? We lose at these kind of midweek games because the summer of football is now over. But you know what's coming back next week? Asian football. Let's go. We get some more midweek action.
Yeah, but
So we
but
can listen to you
come
bang on about the coefficient again.
I was going to say that's what the chat is. The Mariners are out. Sydney are going to Sydney it up. Oh, I mean, can we get excited about that?
Sydney are going to win the ACL too. What are you talking about?
Are they?
They're going
Are
to rescue
they?
the coefficient for the 24-25 season.
Well, let's hope so.
The Mariners are going to win their last two games and net themselves $200,000, which they're going to add to the kitty bank because they won't spend it on a transfer.
Sydney are in a
Absolutely.
tough bracket, aren't they? Sydney? Didn't we say that we thought it was going to be easier than what we thought?
Yeah, they've got like 3 teams that were all in the last 16 of the Champions League last year.
That
or something,
were their
on
3
side of the bracket.
options. And so they've
there
drawn
you go.
Bangkok, which were in the last 16 of last year's ACL proper. And then I believe it's Jeonbuk Hyundai that they would theoretically face in the following round as well. So yes, definitely not easy, which means it should be competitive and actually entertaining for a second-tier Asian competition, which will be very good, but we'll talk about that when those games up. That really will do for this episode of the Round Ball Australia podcast. Poletti, thank you for your time tonight.
Thank you.
Christian Montegan, good to have you back.
Thanks, Lockie. Good to be back.
Jacob Stevens, thank you as well.
Thank you very much, Lockie.
We'll see you back on Friday. There's no midweek football. Who knows what we're going to talk about? Tune in to find out. Thank you again for listening. Goodbye.